Hello there, a very happy Friday to you, and thank you very much for stopping by to check out the Green Pill once again. I hope you had a great week. Now, this is, of course, a place where a health and performance enthusiast brings you a snippet of good data and an action point every Friday for anyone motivated to make positive change in their life. And this week, I was very excited after a few detours to get back to the core fundamentals, the six key pillars of good health, that being sleep, movement, and nutrition, and meditation, people, and purpose. And we'd like to want to start deep diving into these because that's where all the fun is. And in particular on nutrition, because it's January and there is one very popular macronutrient that's, I think, contemplated and discussed by everyone this month, and that is alcohol. There is so many people attempting to do dry January, but I think there's probably even more who are at least evaluating their own relationship and wrestling with their own relationship with alcohol. One such wrestler is a colleague of mine who pinged me over this really interesting article last week, and I knew it had to be this week's data source. It's by Tom Hayton, who's a creative and business consultant, and he became a non-drinker in 2018. And he wrote a really interesting piece, which wasn't what I expected. But he actually takes a real interesting look at the complexities involved in our relationship with alcohol. And I was really keen to share it. I'll put it in the comments. And yeah, there's a lot of really good takeaways from this. First and foremost, let's just get right to the obvious. Alcohol isn't great for us. There is some data on that. The most telling one that really struck me was that it's the leading risk factor for death in males from ages 15 to 59. That's a pretty big range. And he also validates the viewpoint that if alcohol was discovered today, it would be illegal, and pretty much no doubt about it, given the negative social impact, it would be considered a Class A drug. But it's not, and we pretty much know prohibition doesn't work. So even though we know it's so bad, why do we love it so much? But it's culture. It's so deeply embedded into culture and society, and that's all over the world. And Tom mentions the various countries he's visited and everyone's relationship with alcohol. And I know being here in the UK, we love it no matter what, and we do it without question. And one thing in this article that really struck me was that question: why? Why do we drink? And I don't think it's a question we'd like to ask ourselves, because if we think any deeper, then well, just we might not like the answer. I know I didn't when it questioned me. Like, I'm someone who about 5, 6, 7 years ago I became very health conscious and drastically reduced my alcohol intake. This year I probably drank casually about 10 times and 1 to 4 drinks, and probably there were 3 special occasions where I drank in excessive amounts. So I look back on that year and think 13 days out of 365 I drank for. I quite like that ratio. I'm quite happy with that. But what Tom's article did was make me challenge why and question why did I drink on those 13 times? And when I thought deeper about it, I the only answer I could really come up with was probably social insecurity and just not being confident enough to not drink in those 13 situations. And I didn't like that answer. And I think it was great in terms of making me realize that there's probably more influence in society and culture, even on me with my viewpoints, than I would have thought. But it's perfectly natural. And I think I've said before, the most insightful thing I've ever heard in terms of health is understanding that we all still have a caveman brain. So we all still very much feel tribal. And when the rest of the tribe is drinking, it is hard to not be. That's just a fact of the matter. And so I think that's one of the beautiful things about dry January. I think so many people are successful in stopping because we do it together. And that makes it so much more easier. And should you go back to drinking again in February? I think that's kind of the question that I wanted to ask. Well, I challenge you to the action point for this week is to take Tom's advice and ask yourself why, and analyze whether there is a net gain or a net loss in your life from alcohol. I think since I became health conscious in my mid 20s up until now, the last 6 or 7 years, it's probably been a net loss for me. And this really helped me recognize that and address it. And if you feel the same way, if you feel there's a net loss in your life from alcohol, then I would encourage you to maybe consider what you could do beyond dry January. And Tom's got 2 really powerful tips I thought that I'm definitely going to be using. And one of them was to take your communication, was to adopt the identity with yourself and with others as a non-drinker, and just use the simple, short, powerful phrase, I don't drink. I'm definitely going to be using that, because when you try to expand and explain, I've always found it doesn't end up anywhere good. So just use that simple phrase, I don't drink, if you don't want to. And he also mentions how he lives his life. It's something called the default zero approach, where most days his default is zero. He doesn't drink alcohol. On the bar to drink alcohol is very high. And when he does, it's only ever one drink. That's, for me, feels like the next natural progression in my life that I want to make. That the idea of doing that feels good to me, but it might not to you. If that seems too extreme for you, that's fine. But I would just encourage you to challenge yourself and think, what is the next level of my life? How can I take more control if it is having a net loss on impact on my life? I hope this was helpful, and feel free to ping me. I'd love to hear from you and any feedback, and please leave it in the comments as well. And yeah, you have an excellent weekend, and remember to stack the odds in your favor and feel good now.